So, another story card. We have here Kahiri the student, whomst will return as... where is he? Kahiri the Returned. Where we get this thing of like it's a time skip meme, basically. It's like a I have journeyed across the land and done a training montage in secret, and now I'm ready for part 2 of my anime. It's that kind of thing. With like the kid setting out on his journey to become a man, and like to learn to be powerful and do things and have, and then the thing where he returns and he's like a super cool badass from the future. Show unowned. Why? I own all of them. There's no card in this expansion that I don't own, so don't worry about that. But yeah, again, the framing here again is extremely obvious. It's the portal. Like, it's the bright green light of the portal frames Kahiri as the main character in the image. But then also the other characters in the piece, which is like Cillian, his mom, probably, maybe girlfriend, who knows, like one of the two, who's crying because he's leaving, are all in shadow relative to him, who's very highlighted. And there's something really nice about the visual style of this image in particular. If you take a look at the lady out here on the left, especially, but also the way that he's shaded and lighted, it has a really geometric style to it, like a really sort of... I really like the aesthetics of it. I don't know if it's that visible on stream, but there is like a very geometric, like very lined, sort of very defined shape language going on with the way that the coloring is handled here that I really like. It's less refined and fully detailed than some of the other pieces, but I like the roughness of it. Anyway, cool kid. Look at all the gear that he has, like all of the stuff he's got like a shovel, and he's got a grappling hook, and he's got like a bedroll, and like he's got scrolls, and he's got all this gear and all this stuff that he's carrying with him. And then this guy is like, no, I don't need a backpack, I don't need a bedroll, I don't need none of that shit. I just need my giant void blade and my staff. And I was like, I am badass. Like, he doesn't need any props anymore. He doesn't need any tools. He doesn't need any help. He has evolved beyond the need for helpful tools, and now he just does everything by being cool. He does seem to have a little bit of a Kai'Sa situation going on, in the sense that he seems to be doing a bit of void corruption. It's like there's definitely some void stuff happening with this kiddo here, which is curious. But yeah, the storytelling of the flavor text is basically like this guy's like he's setting off for his dangerous journey, as walking off into the portal with the void, and Cillian giving him like, yes, remember what you've learned, blah blah blah. And then once he reappears, this is like literally a second later. He had only been gone a moment when he suddenly reappeared, older by nearly a decade and wielding a strange and deadly-looking weapon. So it's basically like, he's just like, he goes into the portal, and then 2 seconds later, he's back, and like 10 years have passed from his perspective, but not from Cillian's. So that's the story of Kahiri the Returned. Kahiri the Student and Returned. And I quite like that. Like, it's very cool. We have these little mini character moments. It's kind of like the same thing with Cythria, where like you can follow her from arriving as Cythria of Cloudfield, and then she is the squire on the ship sailing towards the Shadow House, and then eventually she's Cythria the Bold, commanding the Dauntless Vanguard to charge in her card. You have this little story time progression thing going on that I really like in the cards. It's quite lovely. But yeah, cool card, like really cool art. I like that his staff has like a clock on it. it's a little obvious, like it's a little much, but it also kind of fits. So, here we have the Sai Scout. We've seen her before. She shows up in the Rock Bear. Where's the Rock Bear? There you are. She's right here. Anyway, the Sai Scout and her friends, who are also in the Rock Bear artwork, hanging out in the background here. And again, you can see, this thing we've talked about a million times already, but like she has much more color contrast, she has much more color saturation than her compatriots in the background, and that's what makes her stand out as the main character. And the same thing goes for the framing of the artwork. We have this frame here. It's a little bit subtle, but you have this, like the curves of the sandstone and stuff. All of that creates this frame for the sky, and then her face pokes out from here into the frame of the sky, and then that extended arm with the eyeglass is the thing that really pulls you towards her and her face as the central feature of the thing. And I love her hair. Like, look at that. That's fucking cool dreadlocks, man. Look at that shit. With the things braided into them. That's a really cool hairstyle. I really like that. It's a very distinctive character design. Boy. Did the void get you in the nose? Yeah, maybe. Maybe it was LeBlanc. Like, LeBlanc was the sneeze, and that's why it vanished before it actually happened. But yeah, I really like this character design. I like that she's all draped up in, like, this like, they're using the cloak and, like, the way that she's completely covered up and draped. Any chance you might see you play some Runeterra with these new cards? Yeah, but you'll have to subscribe to my second channel, 2bskyne. That's where I'm going to be doing that. I'm definitely going to run an Asir deck. Like, I want to run a couple of decks just trying to get Asir to level 3 so I can use the Emperor's deck, because that seems cool as fuck. Don't know if that's going to work, because I'm terrible, but it's going to be fun. But yeah, I like that they're using the fabric that she's covered with, like, to create this color contrast with this, like, sort of bright pinkish pastel color against her dark hair and skin. And also using the wind as a means to, again, emphasize the character. Because these two characters over here, if you look at them, they look like they're not really being affected by the wind at all. But this character over here, she's got, like, the wind blowing through her hair and her cloak and, like, the sand whipping up around her. Which, again, picks her out as a central character in the image, in a way that these two characters aren't. And the colors here are also just lovely. Because, like, Shurima, again, has the problem where it's like, it's all sand and some rocks and sand and rocks and rocks and sand and sand rocks. Like, it's like a lot of yellow, a lot of gold. Like, it's kind of, it can get pretty, it can get kind of samey. Sometimes, like, desert environments. Because, like, oftentimes, you just kind of yellow and brown and yellow. But here we see a use of, like, hey, what about the sort of sunset lights with, like, lots of pinks and, like, these sort of purplish hues over the clouds and the skies, and the ways that affects the light that's falling on the environment. And, like, look at this highlight along the edge of her knee, which is almost like this bright reddish orange kind of thing going on there. Like, there's lots of color variation here that I really like, that Shurima doesn't always just look like bright golden sunlight all the time, that we can do other things to kind of build out what the place is like. Anyway, Soul Spinner. Here's another death, probably. Certainly seems to be a kindred, like, it is a kindred minion, but it seems to be kindred associated as well, because it also generates that little spirit thing in hand from the victim. Presumably, this is one of Elise's victims, and this thing has come to collect the poor people that she killed. Once there was a hapless young man who thought to court a spider, never once suspecting he would end up in her web, which would be the hapless aristocrats, who is probably here, just dead and dying, because fun times. Again, lovely creepy character design. I have a weakness for characters with multiple arms. Like, I think that always adds a certain sense of, like, it's something about characters with too many arms is like, ooh, it's like, oh, is something wrong with you? Scary thing. And what I do like about this character especially is that the arm, like this arm that comes out from, like, up here, and it's like, I can see how that's attached. I can see how that's attached. That's cool. But what about that one? And what about this one? Where are they coming from? What are they attached to? Can't tell. It's underneath the cloak. It's creepy. Maybe it's a second character who's, like, attached to the back of this thing. Ooh. Like, it raises up a lot of like, opportunities for creepy imagery, and it hides it away from us mostly, so that we kind of fill it in with our minds. And I think that works really well. Anyway, the light of the little chinchilla, whatever the hell, like, the little spirit that's being pulled out of this poor bastard, creates the central point of interest in the image. And that central point of interest then draws us to the mask of the Soul Spinner and the arms. And so we start here, and then the threads begin to sort of pull us around different places in the image to see all the detail, which is, again, very nice composition. Do you remember Pinwheel from Dark Souls? Yeah, it could be a Pinwheel situation. Sure, why not? 3 kindred in a trench coat. Yeah. And then we have Thorn of the Rose. So I've already made a short complaining about... So this is a Minotaur. And like 50% of the comments I got on my video about this cart was like, wait, that's a minotaur? I couldn't tell that that was a minotaur. I thought it was just like a lizard lady or someone wearing like a mask or something. Which sort of speaks to the problem with the character design in this card, in that this is the first female minotaur. And Riot, I guess, felt the need to, like, oh, female minotaur, well, she has to be fuckable, right? Like, slender? Thighs? Yes. Yep. Titty? Oh, yeah. Gotta have that, because otherwise it can't be a woman. Like, it's a slightly annoying thing. And it's the kind of thing where I just wish that they'd, like, made the Minotaur Reckoner female. Or, like, just had one other Minotaur lady in the game first to say, hey, yeah, no. Like, some Minotaurs maybe sometimes have slender body types, but it's not, we're not saying that this is like a sexual dimorphism dumb thing. Like, if they just set it up better, or had like a tiny little Twinkie Minotaur man, like a little tiny Minotaur man who's like a Ezreal sized, like, oh, I'm tiny and cute, whatever. Like, something, instead of just doing this thing of like, yes, all the Minotaur men are big and burly and they're muscles, and then the first, like, the Minotaur lady is like, oh, I'm tiny. It's like, oh, look at me, I'm fuckable. Like, if it's just. They should have done the work. Like, they should have set it up so that it doesn't become this annoying trope. Anyway, I've done enough ranting about that. Let's ignore it for now. Let's ignore it completely and talk about the storytelling in the image, which is quite good because there's a corpse on the ground and there's blood pooling around his head. This man is dead, and it seems like this lady has something to do with it. Certainly, she doesn't seem to be disturbed by it. She's just kind of like, oh, corpse on the ground. How terrible. Oh well. And moving on with her life. So, framing. We have this pillar here and that pillar here. Creates a sort of frame in the image because, like, all the light of the party comes out from there, right? So you have, like, these bright lights shining out. And that creates sort of a central point of interest in the image. And that's what the Thorn of the Rose, this Minotaur spy lady, occupies in the center of the piece. And then the light falls on the dead body on the ground, and then you go to here, oh, there's a man who's dead here, lying there. Okay, so there's some association between these two. So the visual storytelling is doing a lot of the work there, because it kind of seems like either she killed him, or maybe she pushed him down the stairs. Either way, like, you get the sense that there's some association between the two. So, xenotype researchers, people doing some studying with Cillian on figuring out what the fuck the deal is with the Void. And again, I like the hair a lot. Like, I really like that big, poofy, natural hairstyle that they've got going on. That's something nice. Like, this, it's nice to see some variety in that. Because hairstyles do tend to get kind of samey, especially in games with anime-inspired art, which a lot of League of Legends has nowadays, where there tends to be, like, hair spikes and tufts. So it's nice to see something different from that. And there's, like, very distinctive faces on these two as well, which I like. There's a lot of character to them. Anyway, the central feature of the picture is not really this researcher herself, but it's this thing that she's looking at. Like, that's where all the light is. That's where, like, that's the central focus of the image. That's what both of them are looking at. And then so this thing, this stasis field or whatever that's holding on to this void tentacle is the central feature of the image. And the secondary feature is the character herself, who then creates this, like, you can see how she kind of cuts off the whole image for the secondary character to be here in the background, kind of looking over and seeing what she's doing over there. Which is, like, just perfectly solid composition. And I do like the expression on her as well. You do get the sense that she's going, like, what the fuck is... thinking about it. Like, there's a lot of consideration to it. And then we have the Bakai Sand Spinner. Here's the poor fool with the shield, who we saw in the Inner Sanctum previously, getting caught out by this terrifying thing. Is it a spider, technically? No, it's not. Okay, but it's clearly meant to be some kind of something. It has a tail and the legs, but then it also has the 6 arms, which gives it 8 limbs total, which would make it a spider kind of creature. I'm not sure exactly what it's supposed to be, but it's creepy as hell. Once again, multiple arms, always scary. And this is just a very unsettling character design, because again, also the different nature of the arms, right? Like, because you have these delicate hands up here, like these delicate fingers spinning around, doing sand spinning shit. And then you have these arms down here, which is just like their fur on them, huge claws, they're big, like, so you get the sense of this thing being sort of like, yeah, something went terribly wrong for this creature when it was trying to ascend. And like we have this big dark like mask thing on it, like this long gaping empty hole in the center of the creature, which is probably just fabric, but still looks like a gaping maw, almost as though it's eating, like it's drawing in the sand from his thing and consuming it somehow. It's a creepy character design. Like it's a thing of like, you don't want to run into that in a dark musty tomb in the middle of nowhere. So yeah, and interestingly enough, we again, symmetry and architecture is creating the frame around the creature over here. Like you can see the vanishing point for the image, like all the lines point to the creature here, the Sandspinner Bakai itself in the middle. And that's why, even though this character here, like we see his face, he's kind of highlighted, like he's there, you can see his feet if you're interested in that kind of thing, is not the central character of the image. Like he's the object of the image, in the sense that like he's being acted upon by the subject of the story, which is the Sand Spinner here, which is in control of the situation. Anyway, let's get back to it. The Blighted Ravine. So, central feature of the Blighted Ravine is the statue right here. Like this horn guy, sword thing, statue man, who has a bunch of black eyes all over him. And again, the composition of the image makes it pretty clear that like all the lines here, like just the vanishing point of the image, or one of the vanishing points, points towards this statue right here as the central feature. And it's highly contrasted with its background. Like the backdrop is like very whited out with the sort of the blizzard and the ice. So that becomes the central feature of the image. Plus it's shaped to look like a person, like a character. So you can kind of see that the main feature of the image is this thing, which also is borne out by like the card art itself. So the Blighted Ravine is not the Howling Abyss. It's one of the sub-bridges and sort of sub-constructions that exist below the bridge itself over the Howling Abyss. And it's... And like, I'm not sure if it's lore relevant, but I know that there was a team, like there are teams of the Draklorn, of like Alessandra's people, the Frostguard, who descend into the frozen, into the Howling Abyss every once in a while to check on what's going on with the Watchers down there. And I think one of the bridges at one point described in the story, The Eye in the Abyss, matches the description of this thing a little bit. I think. But I wouldn't necessarily know that for sure. So, here we have the Callus Bone Crusher, which once again is like, oh hey, you do know how to do non-skinny ladies. And in fact, you seem to be really good at it, so could we not... more of this? Like, just occasionally. It doesn't have to be all of them. Just every once in a while, this is cool to have the diversity. I quite like this character art as well, because like it's pretty clear there's like this, like you get the sense of this overpowering muscular strength. It's not just that she's a large woman. It's, you can see there's a lot of power in there, like this core muscle. She's not flabby. She's just large, and you get the sense of like that power and that strength occupying her body. And you can see how she's like just standing on this poor guy's chest and grabbing his spear with one hand and being like, I am about to callously crush your bones, my friend. And something about, maybe it's just the horn, but something about it feels a little bit like the serpent callers from the Bahuru out on the out in Bilgewater and the Serpent Isles. Bro, Cho'Gath is there. No, I'm pretty sure that's not Cho. It's some kind of desert creature that she rides. It shows up in the background of some of the other Renekton followers' art as well. Let's see if we can find... It's this thing. You can see it here. Like the same long red body. It's the same creature. Not sure exactly what it is. I don't remember if we've been told what kind of creature it is specifically, but it's some kind of desert lizard creature that has scales and kills people. But yeah, storytelling of the image is like we have a lot of dead soldiers, so clearly this is like a raid by the by Renekton's followers on something related to Azir, and she's just like they're killing like the last survivor, something along those lines. Like, nice try, little man, and then once again, lighting does the job of highlighting her character as central to the image. Framing is being done by these white pillars, buildings, whatever the hell, these architectural features in the background creates this skybox. And inside that box, we find her head and the main features that she's got. I like her expression a lot. Like, it's not like an overly cartoonishly villainous, like, expression. It's more like a, like, it's more like a sort of calm confidence in the knowledge that this man is about to die kind of thing. Which works quite well for her. And again, like, I just like that, hey, there's different kinds of people in Runeterra. And it's not just weirdly skinny people all the time for no reason. Ah, there it is. Teen spirit. And here we see them actually doing the, like, poking the rock bear with a stick and pulling on its tail before they do the thing of running away and laughing at the poor thing. And again, I like these characters. Like, I like that they're doing this dumb shit for no other reason except that they're stupid teenagers. It's kind of endearing. It's stupid, but it's kind of endearing. And yeah, once again, some interestingly enough, not a lot of lighting doing the work of highlighting this character. Like, we have the light on her cloak, and we have a little bit of edge lighting around the corners of her. But we don't have a ton of, like, explicit sunlight sort of marking her out as the central character of the image. That's all being done by the composition, where, like, you have this secondary character and the rolling hills behind her. Sort of all of it creates this kind of sort of bulbous wedge shape in the middle of the image that creates a space for her to occupy that makes her the central character. And I see people have noticed the arms. Oh yes, like, again, the artists at well, not necessarily at Riot, because Riot contracts this out to at least 2 studios and a couple of independent contractors, and some Rioters internally also contribute art to Legends of Runeterra. It's like, it's kind of all over the place. I think Daole is a Rioter, so this is specifically a piece of Riot art. But yeah, like, I love the energy of this image. Like, I love that you can just see that these are, like, annoying little shitty kids who are about to have fun by, like, distressing a poor innocent animal out in the desert. It's just like, it's a fun scene. It has a good energy. I appreciate the expressiveness on their characters' faces as well. Then we have the field musicians, and as someone pointed out on Reddit, their keyword should be a tune rather than a tune. And I like these guys. These are combat bards. I have a weakness for that. Like, just people who just wander onto a battlefield and like, and somehow they manage to win. I kind of like that, like the field musicians as characters. Just like, I want them. I really want them to be. Need to get rid of. I want them to be friends with the war chefs. Like, I want the war chefs to meet the field musicians. I want them all to be buddies. I think it's the battle chefs and like combat bards. They want them to be friends. I don't know. In my head, they should be friends. But yeah, again, the siege engine blowing up in the background just does it for me. Yeah, that's the Noxian City Breaker getting wrecked back there, which I think is lovely. Again, framing, we have, like, the central bard is the one whose face we can actually see, like the central field musician, this guy. The other guys are there too, but he's the central dude. We can see his face, we can see most of his character expression. So his character is kept very sort of clean and sort of separate. Like, you compare how much stuff is going on in the background of this guy with how little stuff we have, again, like using the clear sky as this shape, this box for the character to occupy. Sort of keeping him clean, keeping him sort of separate from much of the action in the background so that he can stand out as a central character. And then, like, my one criticism of the field musicians is that some of the characters in the backgrounds, like, especially these two dudes here and these guys here, like, sometimes it feels like the background characters aren't really doing much, like, they're just kind of standing there menacingly at each other. It's made up for, more than made up for, by the fact that, like, these vines are popping out of the ground and throwing dudes, just yeeting motherfuckers, and smashing up the siege engine and shit. Like, there's lots of action going on, it's just that some of the background characters feel a little static. That's a nitpick only I care about. But I just think this is so fucking cool, having like these fucking combat bards just standing there playing Never Gonna Give You Up on their flutes, and then nature rises against the enemy. It's a cool concept. I enjoy it. We have more storytelling about Jarvan. Like, this seems to be like after the penitent squire has made it back to Demacia and informed people that, hey, Jarvan did a stupid fuck up, like the dumb idiot prince went and did some dumb shit. This is everybody riding into action to try and find him, because of course we can't have a prince missing. Oh, royalty, they're important. So everyone's springing into action. They're like, come on, lads, we shall have to find our fail son and bring him back home, or whatever. But the energy of that piece is really, really good. Like, you really get the sense of, like, everybody kind of scrambling, like pulling on armor, like just running to, like, I need to get the thing, get the horse, get the helmet, do the thing. Like, you get this sense of urgency and, like, rapid motion and like sudden organizing happening in this, like, with the raptors flying through the sky, and the horse and the man jumping on the horse, and the guy going, beckoning, yeah, bring me the horse and the helmet, and doing the thing. So I quite like all of that. Like, the energy of this piece is really, really good. Like, you really do get the sense of, like, this tremendous energy being put towards a common purpose. I like that they have the penitent squire just show up again. Like, she's still there trying to help do the thing, and she still doesn't have any muscles on her arms, which is weird. And then we have this, like, unreasonably handsome Vanguard. It's like, oh, I just picked him straight out of like, a freaking, like, modeling magazine or something. Like, straight out of Central Casting. Yes, we need a man who looks like, just, like, the most stupidly handsome knight character person who can sit on a horse and look good. That's basically just what he is. It's just, I think it's ridiculous how handsome they made him. Kind of funny. Anyway, look at the Poro. Itty bitty Poro! Who's also there, who's apparently an official member of the Dauntless Vanguard nowadays. Which I approve of fully. But yeah, the Poro is down here, like, in the little frame created by the horse's body. But here, again, the clear sky being used as a means, like, to remove a character from a detailed background that might distract from them. So we have his face right out here against the clear sky, or against the cloudy sky in this case, but against the sky, against this sort of bright open space, sort of centering him out as being above and, like, a central character in the action. And then as a secondary character, we have, like, his arm reaching down without even looking, because he's such a cool guy, grabbing the helmet from the squire, making her the secondary character of the image. And it works really well. And this is also, like, an opportunity to look at, like, compare and contrast, like, the color palette of Shurima, which tends to be very sort of golden yellow, golden yellow, golden yellow. Compare and contrast that with what the sunlight looks like in Demacia. Here, the sunlight isn't golden. Here, the sunlight is stark, bright white. Like, this, it's a very different color of sunlight that's being used in Demacia a lot of the time. To create this sort of Gondor, like, bright white cliffs and, like, shining armor kind of aesthetic for that particular region. And once again, Asir is demonstrating that he employs only the most attractive people possible to do his PR for him. Just a hot lady with her squad of, like, hot buff dudes, basically. Which, as PR goes, is a good way to get people to make positive associations with your slave state. God, I hope they don't. Like, I hope he doesn't make that stupid mistake again. But yeah. So, once again, there's some symmetry going on here. We have these two lines of buff dudes that sort of create this, along with the pillars in the background, creates this wedge shape. And this wedge shape is then occupied and dominated by the Golden Ambassador herself, with like her giant cloak billowing in the wind and like her outstretched arms to the side. Like, she's central in the image. And then you have this Seer in the background. It's like, I can also pose with my arms out and be hot. Yes, I am capable of doing that. Hanging out in the background just as a bit of flavor to the image. But it is very much about this composition right here, like this wedge driving down into the image that she occupies as the central character. And again, love the hair. Like some really cool hairdos we see around here. And then the Salt Spire, which again gets us to Shuriman's Salt Worker quickly learns which deposits are suitable for collection and which are best left alone. Yes, he is about to learn. Where we get the Rock Bear hanging out again, but we also get the Salt Spires that we saw in the cinematic, which apparently get mined for salt, which makes sense because salt is like incredibly valuable resource. We don't really think about it that way these days because salt is so fucking cheap, but salt in ye olden times was incredibly valuable and incredibly important. And so salt mining operations have been in place in the world for many, many, many centuries. And clearly they do that too in Shurima. Although this guy's about to find out that, you know, there are salt spires you probably shouldn't mine. Again, the lighting on the image, like the Rock Bear being the central character of the image. We have this streak of sunlight going right across it, which highlights it for us. We have this frame of literally the cave in the Salt Spire that it's sleeping in. And then we have a secondary frame here, which our little luckless miner man occupies, making him a secondary character in the image. Sandcrafter. And I really like this lady's armor. Like, I like the way that she's designed. That it looks like a sort of very highly ceremonial sort of mage armor kind of thing of like, not really meant to be practical necessarily, but it's meant to make her look cool. Because she's doing sand magic things and making sand soldiers happen in the world. What better way to preserve meat than with salt in the desert? Yeah, I mean, that's one of the important functions of salt, is that it was used for preservation of food, which allowed you to store food, like, over winter, especially. It's quite important to human survival. So yeah, salt used to be very, very valuable. Nowadays, cheap as dirt. Why is she more buff than Sivir? Yeah, this is true. But yeah. So, two main characters in this image. We have the Sandcrafter herself, and then we have the Sand Soldier that she's crafting. And, like, you can tell that this character has power over that character because, like, the composition tells you so. This thing, like, sort of kneeling, sort of rising out of the sand, sort of pulling itself out, like, I live! And then her rising, like, standing, fully solid in the frame, but also above it, and holding this spear over it, like, which again, like, just the composition tells you that this character has power over that character, which I think is, like, just good visual storytelling to make that clear. I love sand. It's soft and smooth and lovely, and it doesn't get anywhere. Even if you don't like League of Legends or Legends of Runeterra, the universe of Runeterra is worth looking into. Oh, yes. Like, there's so much good lore in League of Legends. Like, there's so many cool stories. And it kind of sucks that so much of the community never really seems to find them. Like, just because they're sort of sequestered away on universe and it's hard to search them. But, like, again, like I said, if you want to get into League of Legends lore, definitely search out the Lysandra stories. Like, the Lysandra stories are a great place to start, I think. Especially, like, the Eye in the Abyss and things like that, if you're into cosmic horror, because that's kind of where they are. This in LeBlanc creating LeBlanc. Yes, they are all LeBlanc. What's the deal with Witch Soldier? Maybe someday. But yeah, it's a good composition. Like, interestingly here, we have this, like, the shape of this building in the background creates this frame, like, again, framing, like making a shape within the shape of the image that you can then occupy a character inside is like a common compositional trick for guiding the eye and making a composition feel good. That, as well as, like, the golden rule. But here you can see that this building is being used to create, like, instead of framing her against the sky, she's being framed specifically against the building as this point of interest that sort of draws our attention here and grounds her, which works in this instance really well. And it allows the Sand Soldier to be like a full secondary character, because that is not framed against the building. That one is framed against the blue sky. So like this power play between the, like, with her holding power over it, but also being a little bit less forward in the image, and this thing looking more like a main character, but clearly being dominated by her. It's like there's lots of little interplays there that make this a pretty solid composition. At least I think so. Then we have this lovely child. Look at that precious baby with its mouth and its tongue and its legs. Oh god, so many legs. Here's an Elise card for you. And again, framing. The framing here is pretty clear. Like, you have the staircase, and that's pretty much the thing that does the framing, that it exists here. And the color doesn't hurt either. Like, the big color shift from, like, these warm grays and browns into this bright, just pink, purple glow full of spiders over here. Oh, so cute. Well, yeah, okay. Cool. Something I do like. I like the guy's face. Like, I like that, like, doesn't have a chin, and he's got this sort of distinct nose, like, slightly chubby cheek. Like, a lot of the NPCs, like, a lot of the background characters in Legends of Runeterra have really strong, distinctive faces. And I like that that's being continued into it's probably 6 more. It's Kudos Productions, this one. Okay. I thought it would be 6 more vodka. Like, he's a nice little character. Like, he looks like a distinct sort of aristocratic fool who's about to get very eaten. It's like, yeah, a good character design, and then just big spider monstrosity poking out of the frame, being scary. Oh, don't like this. Oh shit, there's a super chat. I know nothing about Runeterra, but hearing you go through the art is so artistically inspiring. Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be helpful. Your videos are a go-to for getting through art block. Cheers for that, and have a nice week. Thank you very much. That's a very generous super chat of you. Thank you very much. That's kind of you. Anyway, this little fucker, Spirit Leech. This is a cool little character design, isn't it? So there's a couple of things going on here. First of all, is it just me, or does this look a little bit Lysandra-like a little bit Watcher-ish? I don't know if that's probably not intentional, but it's certainly there in the shape language. Probably nothing to that. But I do like that it's this little furry gremlin thing with, like, sort of almost bird-like claw legs kind of thing going on. And then you have this big, like, just this big mask with, like, these giant mouth and tongue. Like, you really do get the sense that this is a creature that, like, exists to eat. That it exists to consume, to chew on things and gnaw on them. Just from the giant bony teeth that it's got. I don't know that it has a joint. I don't know if it can chew, but it can certainly carve. Ugh. Like, scary little thing. Anyway, central point of interest in the image is this branch right here, right? Like, that's this central thing in the image that occupies a lot of the space. On that branch sits our character, and then the branch and the character themselves are both highlighted in the image by light, whereas everything else is sort of much more kept in shadow or edge lighted as a contrast. Now, there's much less of a contrast here, though, and certainly in a lot of the Shadow Isles cards, between the character and the background than you would see in a place like Shurima, where, like, often the background will be, like, completely in shadow. And I don't know if that's just a stylistic thing for the Shadow Isles, but something I noticed anyway. Because, like, compare and contrast that with just how much, like, Azir here is de-emphasized, how much these characters are de-emphasized relative to the main character in the image, the voice of the Risen. So, again, as we've seen before, like, when it's Azir's, like, when it's his, PR people, when it's his acolytes, when it's his preachers spreading the word of Azir, often you'll have the sun disk in the background, like so. Sort of emphasizing the fact that they are connected to his power, emphasizing the fact that they are speaking for him and speaking for his power. Just gonna check that I haven't missed any donations. Nope, just super chats. Okay, cool. Cool. Emphasizing that they're connected to him, that they speak for him. And here also, you get the, just the sun disk, which is a representation of the sun, and then the actual literal sun backlighting this character, like to sort of extra super definitely emphasize the connection between the whole sun god, Asir, kind of Egyptian Ra, Horus kind of thing that he's got going on, and her. Skyen, can you please say creature more often? Well, she's not a creature, she's a person, but sure. This is Eunice, not 6 more vodka, and yet still she has no organs. Yeah, again, we're dealing with a situation of, like, the waist is thinner than the thigh, which is, like, you shouldn't do that. Like, unless you are, like, hyper-stylizing, or you're, like, making something that's supposed to be porn, or you're hyper-stylizing for, like, a hyper-stylized aesthetic, which there isn't. Like Legends of Runeterra doesn't have the kind of hyper-stylized aesthetic that would support this kind of extreme anatomy distortion. It's like, I don't think it works. Like, I just don't think it works for the character. Like, I think it gets overlooked because the art is high quality, like, because the rendering is so good, but if you reduce this to line work, I don't think this anatomy would look good. I really don't. Anyway, once again, like, the buildings create, like, this trough, this kind of shape in the image that she then gets to occupy as the central character of the piece. Whereas Asir is, like, completely de-emphasized. He's, like, kind of trapped between this guy and her leg. Sort of there in the background, just kind of blessing the whole procedure with, like, his, yes, I am Asir, and I approve this message. But not the central character in the image at all. Just kind of there for flavor, as it were. And again, the other characters in the image, they're there, they have a little bit of edge lighting, but mostly they're in shadow, and mostly you don't get to see their faces. And so here we have one of, like, I like this Bakai a lot. Like, I like this hyena Bakai. It's sort of, it has a nice energy to it. Like, I kind of dig it. Clearly just kicking the ass of some of Renekton's Raiders. Now, the one thing I'll say about this piece of art is that it feels unfinished. Like, especially looking at the Raider over here, like some of the background details over here, this feels really kind of, like, it feels like they finished the hyena, the central character. It feels like they finished, like, the portal and the Raider over here on the left, but this over here feels like it was still in the sketching phase and they were not quite done refining it to the same standard that they usually do with the rest of the art, which kind of sucks a little bit because this is a really cool creature design. Like, I like the whole, like, it's a mummy and it's also, like, a raging hyena at the same time. Like, I like that combination aesthetic. Because it ties it closer to Nasus, actually. Nasus also has the bandages all over his body that sort of tie him to mummy aesthetics and things like that. So I kind of like that. I enjoy the energy. Like, I like the framing, the compositional trick of having it literally emerge from, like, this giant, obvious triangle in the middle of this giant black triangular void in the middle of the image. It's like a strong way to make the character feel like they're emerging, like they're just rushing out to meet these other characters. I just feel like this stuff over here could really have been finished up a bit more. Right, the Ruin Runner, who's riding what looks to be like a desert llama, which is... No, okay, they have desert llamas, I guess, with a hump on them. So they're also dromedaries? Sorta. They seem very furry for desert animals, but, you know. But yeah, I quite like the Ruin Runner. Like, she has arms. Look at that. She has actual muscle on her arms because she lives a life where, like, she does fighting stuff and, like, riding around on hard life in the desert, so she has muscles on her arms. What a concept. And then they're clearly fighting some of Renekton's Raider people, like, over there. And I like this Mad Max guy over here, like, with the lower crocodile jaw thing strapped to his head. Like, it has a good Mad Max energy that I really kind of appreciate. from this whole thing. But again, lighting is doing a lot of the work here of making this the central character in the image. Like, because this guy is much bigger, he's much more central in the no, not central. He's much bigger, he's much more prominent in the image, but he's completely in shadow relative to our main character, and he's not facing us really. He's like kind of looking at her, so we follow his eye line to her as well. In the same way that we have this frame being created by this broken arch, whatever this thing is, creates a little bit of a frame for the llama, dromedary, camel creature to occupy with the lady sitting on top of it. And that works really well. And I do like, I think this could be done a little bit better. Like, I think you could probably have used more, like, speed lines and there's probably more that could have been done to make this thing look like it's spinning around real quick. But the effect is there. And the effect works. Like, I do like the idea that she's, like, swinging this thing over her head, trying to ride away from this. It's just, don't follow me, motherfucker. I have this thing. It's gonna fly into your face if you don't back off. Kind of thing. And the energy of the llama creature moving as well is good. Like, I like the sand being kicked up by its paws, or its hooves, as it sort of springs into action and tries to get her out of there. That works really well. So, another little piece of a seer's storytelling. Not sure exactly where this is supposed to be happening, but where or when it's supposed to be happening, but this is a seer calling upon his army of these sandstone chargers, like these sand centaurs, which, again, can't help but wonder if they were based on anything that actually ever lived in Shurima, or they were just, like, out of his imagination. Isn't she the one from Rise comic? I don't know. I don't think so? Could be. Is there any... Yeah, no, like, she's just... I just think she's a raider. Like, I just think she's a tomb raider of some kind. I don't think she's specifically the one from Rise. I forgot 2 cards? Oh, shit, yeah, the Draklorn and the Marshal. Doi. I got so excited when I saw the Rampaging Bakai, I just wanted to get to him. But yes, let's finish the Sandset Tombs, and then we'll go back and catch the 2 I forgot. So, once again, composition and imagery is being used. Like, we have this symmetry, or, well, not symmetry in the image, but symmetry between these 2 architectural features creates this frame right here, which centers our attention along with all of the sunlight coming in and, like, lighting up this area quite literally. Centers our attention on here and Azir and him doing things of some kind. And then, as a secondary feature, like, we go, oh, okay, there's a character here, it's a horseman, and there's another horseman, and there's another man-horse over there. But it's all, like, the composition is doing the work of centering our attention on this central dais, where Asir is hanging out, and there's these statues of falcon-headed something-somethings, which, again, associate themselves with Asir's power. Now we have the Draklorn Inquisitor. And one little fun note to see is, look at the pose that these guys are holding in the background, right? Like the sword clasped in front of their chest kind of thing. And then look at, let's see if we can find where the heck the thing was. There. So you can see what they're imitating, right? Like they're basically doing exactly the same pose. Probably an imitation of whatever heroes that statue is meant to represent for them. Which, like, I kind of like that consonance between them. And then we have the central Draklorn Inquisitor dude, person. Actually, impossible to tell what gender they are. It's just striding forwards, getting ready to do some kind of killing with the one blue sans eye over on the side there. So again, contrast and color saturation is doing the job of centralizing this character. And then also just the fact that they are central in the image. Like, they're right beneath this, like, skull statue up here. So you can draw, like, a direct line down there, and that direct line will go right through the center of this portal here, which also creates a frame, especially with the backlighting behind the character, for the central Draklorn Inquisitor, who is striding forth to do Lyssandra's bidding. And it's a cool design. Like, I like all the ornamentation. Like, we have the helmets and stuff, which are the sort of the distinctive Draklorn character design pieces. But then we have all these, like, amulets and like bits and bobs and things that are just kind of hanging, draped off this character, which I think works quite well to make them distinct. Anyway, boob plate and kind of dumb boob plate too. Like, this is like... this is like boob socks. Like, these are like metal boob socks. And it's like, as always, I get annoyed by that. Like, I feel like that's kind of... So the point of boob plate, from a character design perspective, like, disregard all questions about practicality, because not interested in that. It's a fantasy game. But boob plate as a character design element, the point of having it is to let people see visually, oh, hey, that character has breasts. Like, it's a way to emphasize, like, if the character's female, you can emphasize their femininity by showing, aha, there's titties underneath here. Woo! And sometimes in character design, there's a place for that. Like, when you have a character who's otherwise heavily anonymized and their gender is important, then you can use boob plate to show, hey, definitely lady character, breasts, boobies. She has them, and like, it can be a way to do some communication about like the identity of the character. It can be used in a semi-sensible way, but it's like there's ways to do it too much. There's ways to like, no, we could probably tell that this character was feminine without incredibly tight-fit titty boob socks hanging off the front of her chest plate. Like that. It just looks silly. Like, it just feels like the character artist is like, shit, oh fuck, how do I make a woman? How do I make a character look like I don't know, how can you do that without breasts? It's impossible. Like, it feels like the character designer didn't know how to make this character look feminine, except like by making the most obvious like feminine character design decision ever, which is make the breasts visible. And it's like, just kind of Anyway, framing and aesthetics, like, we have a pretty, not so much of a clear frame here, so much as it's just that this character is highlighted up against the empty sky, basically. And she's holding aloft the staff, and she's clearly in control. Like, she holds up the staff, it's glowing with power, then that same power infuses all of the people who are like on the ground, and you see, okay, again, this dominance thing of like this power comes from her, so she has control over the situation, and she's raised above every other character in the image, which makes her prominent and makes her stand out as a leader character, and that's pretty much all that's going on with her, I think. That was Bakai, Runner, Sensual Tomb, there we go. And then we get back to Kahiri, the Returned. And, yeah, I do wonder, like, to what extent this Void thing, like, to what extent it's like a Kai'Sa-like corruption. Like, if it's if he too has bonded with a Void parasite in order to gain access to these kinds of powers. It's not something that's really explained at any point in the story, but the coolest thing about this guy, and the coolest thing about his splash art, is the rift in time that he's creating. Like, where you can see glimpses of the place that he's creating a portal back to. Sort of just kind of carved into the air of the world by the magic that he's casting. I think that's really cool. And then, of course, there's the visual storytelling of, like, he's clearly been rampaging. Like, he's been fucking up some Voidlings real good. Because they're lying dead as Voidling can be anyway, on the ground around him. So, like, you get the sense, like, this guy has been carving his way through these bastards, and has been doing it pretty effortlessly, because he's unharmed entirely. Anyway, obvious framing. We have these spiraling circles, creating a framing around our central character, like both the void tentacles and the magic portal that he's casting to try and find his way home. And that centralizes him pretty well in the frame, in a pretty good way. So, just, yeah, solid, sensible piece of artwork. It works really well. He's better than Kai'Sa or Ascendant. Well, yeah, is that he's different. Like, he's better than Kai'Sa mostly because Kai'Sa's character design is, in my opinion, kind of crap. But they're not the same kind of character. Like, Kai'Sa, the problem with Kai'Sa is that she's supposed to be this hard-bitten, sort of desperate survivor character who's, like, been living in the void, and, like, this feral void child character who's, like, sort of barely surviving through anything. That's kind of her story. Kahiri, like, his story is not really about being, like, a desperate survivor struggling against overwhelming odds. His story here, as he's being presented, is about conquering. Like, it's like he's confident, he's powerful, he has complete control over the situation. Like, he doesn't have that desperate survivor thing going on with him. Maybe he should, because he's been in the void, and people should be desperate survivors in that situation, but But they're different characters. They have different there's different concepts behind them, I think. Anyway, towering stone horn. So the lighting scheme here is very obvious, because there's light coming down from above, highlights the face and head of this giant character, and then there's the framing, which is also pretty obvious, which is this these streaming lines of trees, sort of pointing us, sort of creating this sensation of pointing us towards the top of the image here with the giant horns of the towering stone horn. And again, using other creatures for scale, we have little deer and stuff just kind of hanging out, just to give us a sense of how big this motherfucker really is. And it works less well with other animals than it does with humans, but you still do get the sense of whoa, damn, that's a biggin', as a tall boy hanging out in the forest, being large. So that works pretty well for me. Someone is saying in chat, it doesn't really look Demacian very much, and that's true. The lore here says that the great stone horns are reputed to have come from the time of the petricite forest was young. They're spreading antlers made of material similar to those now ancient trees. So they're like petricite forest creatures, sort of. But they do look this thing does look a lot more like it belongs in Ionia, to me, than Demacia. And that's true for the forest environment as well. This forest environment looks much more Ionian than it does Demacian in a lot of ways. And then we have King Jarvan III. And I've talked previously about how color and saturation can be used to centralize a character to mark them out as the main character of a piece. You can tell with Jarvan III what it is that's supposed to mark him out as a central. He's just he's covered in gold. It's just gold, 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 a little bit of white, gold, 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 and gold. He's just so ostentatiously golden. Compared to everything else in the scene, he's so ostentatiously golden. It's ridiculous. He wants to be a Azir. Yeah, basically. But yeah, big, thick gold daddy for you all there. We have Xin Shao hanging out over here. We have Tiana Crownguard hanging out over there. And then you have this character. And people thought for a while that this was Cythria of Cloudfield. There was a timeline error where they accidentally put Cythria earlier in the timeline than she's supposed to be. No, this is not Cythria. I don't think this is a named character, but it is not Cythria, just so you know. Anyway, some storytelling here. This is the penitent squire presenting the banner, the standard of Jarvan the fourth to his father, Jarvan III, who then, realizing that his son is possibly dead and certainly in trouble, drops his scepter. You get this sense of this is a moment of shock for him, and this is also the moment where Tiana is like, shit, we need to get a search party together, get everyone together. This is the image that leads into all the energy and hustle and bustle of this image right here, everybody getting together and getting, we need to go and find the stupid prince idiot who got himself captured. So, you see that energy beginning here. Again, the storyline continuing over the course of multiple images. LeBlanc in the flavor text. Yes. What, pray tell, would a father sacrifice to save his son? Better yet, what would a king? Which again implies that LeBlanc had a lot to do with Jarvan getting baited into that bad battle. And I do I really do like the use of light and the color of this image. It looks really good, especially the penitent squire with the water still rolling down the back of her breastplate. That's really cool. So, Raz Bloodmane. He's a character from a lore story, actually, a lore story for Renekton that came out, who took over leadership of this group of raiders after Renekton killed their previous leader, who was of Astaya, actually. So that's where he's from, and he's called Bloodmane, presumably because he has this big shock of bright red hair, basically. And he rides a three-headed crocodile. These three crocodiles are one monster, and he rides them, and there's like they're the most powerful monster in the group, and this is but what they seem to have killed here is the more interesting thing, because they seem to have killed one of Rek'Sai's children. One of the little void beasties that occupy the sands of Shurima. And he's sort of sitting up there going, haha, I have destroyed the monster thing. I'm so cool, I'm the leader of the group, woohoo. And again, the framing here is incredibly obvious. Like, you have the sunlight backlighting him right here, and then you have the cliffs and the background creating this open space, this open shape for him to occupy, so he just sits there like a towering hero, sort of just gazing over his domain from up high. And then we have the Ether Fiend, and I really like the design of this, like the vulture, that it's a vulture that eats spirits, basically, like eats the corpses of dead gods, as it were. Like, that's a badass concept all on its own. But then you get the sense of scale. Again, like, we have this guy right here, like the fading icon, who we have like a sense of, like, he's like human-sized, he's like person-sized. We saw him in his previous art. And then we look at him relative to that thing as like, oh no, that is very scary. That's a large bird. That's a very big, large bird. Don't wanna mess with that big, large bird. That's very bad. Making it hella scary. And there's some color coding going on here, where like all of the deaths, like Kindred, Mask Mother, like all of the other little deaths, they all have this blue glow around them, right? Like, they create these blue spirits. They have this blue glow to their eyes. The Ether Fiend is purple. Like, it has a different color of power, so it's like a thing apart, kind of. It's a thing that's a little bit different from the other deaths, so you get kind of the sense of like, oh, it's a different kind of creature, which, as visual storytelling goes, is quite good. But yeah, compositionally, we have like the trees creating sort of this frame, and we have like the backlight from this bright white gate or whatever, creating like a backlight for the thing, creating a space and a dominance for it. But it's also the barrier here, like the tree trunk there is like, it's not really clear that he's effectively hiding from the thing, right? But as a compositional trick, having this tree trunk create a literal barrier between him and it sort of removes the immediate danger. Like, it doesn't look like this thing is immediately going to charge at him and try to eat him. It looks like it's a sort of a moment of a calm before the storm, before it notices him, before it sees him. So he still feels a little bit safe right here. At least until, well, you know. Here's another one of my favorites from the new line of cards. I really, really like the Sanctum Conservator. Again, it's a Bakai, just filled with wild magic that it cannot control, which seems to have been meant to turn into some kind of jackal creature, maybe? Like, it's not 100%, it has this very long tail. Maybe it's more of a lizard creature than anything, but I really like that open, gaping maw of a void that it has in the center, like, it's just sucking these poor people in. Like, you can see it's turning them into sand and absorbing them, which is like, that shit is scary as hell, man. That's a really cool creature design. Like, just a really cool creature design. And they're like the rows of teeth that are rising up out of this mask collar thing that it's got, like just these rows of spiky teeth rising up under it, which is like, oh, that's a good design for like an ancient tomb monster of some kind. Like, I really, really like this, and really, like, the main thing in this image that's of compositional interest is just the light. Like, there's other stuff, like little bits of framings being created by the background stuff, but it's the light. It's the bright blue consuming light pulling in these poor, unfortunate bastards, sucking in everything that makes him the center of this image. Absolutely terrifying creature. Wonderful. And so we come to the Sandstone Chimera, which I don't think is a sand creature necessarily? Maybe? It's not 100% clear. Like, it's like a sand creature in the same sense that, like, it's not ephemeral for one thing. But it's not clear that it's a sand creature in the same way that, for instance, the sand soldiers are. Probably, but it feels more like it's a creature that's actually capable of manipulating sand in the same way that, like, a seer is. At least as far as I can tell. But it's, again, kind of a cool character design. You have this griffin kind of like this lion body with like bird wings, and then this mask that's, I don't know what that mask is even supposed to be, but it looks badass as hell. Anyway, framing, pretty obvious. Like you have like the sand soldiers themselves create this little bit of a wedge shape at the bottom of the image, but mostly it's just the god rays coming down from above, the light, creating this incredibly obvious central point of interest that the Chimera itself then occupies. Upon a seer's return, Shuriman's caught sight of ancient beasts of legend made of sand, but no less impressive. So yeah, it's probably made by a seer, but it's not ephemeral though, so I don't know, who knows. And I think that's all of them. Did I forget something? No, I think we got through it. I think we got through all of the new unit cards anyway. For Rise of the Ascendant. Yeah, there's the Emperor's deck. You're right, the Emperor's deck. Where the fuck can we see that, though? Rito, please. It's not like they're all spell cards. No, none of these. Like, yeah, we can't see a Seer's deck here. I guess we'll have to go to Mobilytics for that. Yeah, pretty much. Okay, well, heading over to Mobilytics then. Give me a second. I need to figure out how to find this on the thing. New cards? Let's see. No, I don't think they have it either. Do they? Oh, they do have one thing I missed. I missed this thing. Which is the, what's it called? The stasis statue. I did miss that one. We have the two researchers, the Sino researchers again, sitting there watching, basically as we've got a Shurelia's Hourglass effect going on. I think this is, maybe this is Kahir the Returned, who's being used as an experimental subject for this thing. But yeah, again, gold in the center of the image makes this thing stand out pretty freaking clearly as compared to everything else, as well as the bright light coming out of the hourglass. And then the two researchers being secondary characters in the backgrounds looking on, seeing what he's doing. And the reason we missed this one is because you have to cast a spell to make this thing show up on the battlefield. And I wasn't looking at spells. Let's see. Yeah, okay, they don't have this Emperor's deck on the new cards page. What about if I go to... No? They don't have it on a seer either. Okay. I'm kind of trying to look my way through filters to find out how the frick to find this thing. Let's see. It's limited to Shurima. That should give us a chance at finding... Man, don't they have it anywhere? They are the uncollectibles after Azir on the new cards. Okay. Oh, there they are. I see them. I see them. I'm an idiot. I see them. Here we are. Jeez. Golden Herald. Eternal Gladiator. Pot of Greed. And I think that's all of them. Empress Divide. Yes. Mostly has a bunch of spell cards in that deck, right? So that's probably it. And this one is just because it's Pot of Greed. It's fucking Pot of Greed, you asshole. It's Pot of Greed. Anyway, so General's Palace, which is just kind of, it's just kind of Azir's level 3 again. Like it's kind of just it's just the Azir's level 3 again, just from a different perspective, and like zoomed out a little bit. So I think this is supposed to be the moment after he has done this, and then he descends back down to the ground, and he's like, "Aha! Now my army is ready to march." Like I think that's kind of the idea of it. Is that's the moment after he has done this thing. And, like, the colors here are gorgeous. Like, just the hyper saturation, especially near the center of the image. So Azir becomes essentially this red shadow. Oh, what does Pot of Greed do? Well, Pot of Greed allows me to draw 2 extra cards from my deck. But yeah, like the hyper saturation at the center here, like this opulence, like just the gold and beautiful, is sumptuous light of the goddamn thing. Absolutely lovely. Very pretty. Very pretty. Then we have the Emperor's Guard, and this card is like, Like I like the character designs of these characters. Like I like the purple braided hair. I like a lot of that. But this composition is kind of just not that interesting to me. Like these guys are like what the fuck are they? They're like a 5/4 for 2 with fearsome. Like they're a pretty damn powerful card, but you look at this thing and they just kind of look like town guards in Skyrim. Like they just kind of look like, oh yeah, we just people just, like they don't look that exceptional. They don't look like super elite warriors or whatever. They just look like regular fighter characters. And it's because they're just sort of like hanging out and walking in a line in like a town. It's just like they're just kind of hanging out, and I feel like they needed a slightly more dramatic scene to like really sell their character design, like to really sell their power, which is like, we could have done a little bit more with that. Cool character design. I just wish it had been presented better for this particular art. Then we have these characters right here, which are like, they're wearing masks, they're socially distancing, which is good. It's nice to see Riot sort of modeling positive behaviors. But once again, every time we have characters who sort of are meant to embody Azir's power, they like to sort of slap the sun disk in the background. They're just like, yeah, this is a representative of Azir's empire who's doing Azir empire stuff. In the background. Again, you have the open, clear sky, framing these two central characters as more important than the random sand soldiers who's just standing at attention everywhere else. And then we have this guy. Now here again, that compositional thing we've talked about many times, like the wedge shape, like with think, and you have this wedge that creates this open space for this character to dominate. And like, yeah, it's very clear and obvious here, and very saturated colors on this card as well, like really saturated, like really just sumptuous and kind of opulent. It kind of flattens the image almost a little bit. It sort of takes away some of the texture that a lot of the other artwork has. Again, sun disk in the background, and this big, buff, powerful warrior guy hanging out in the back of this cool looking lion. The lion is LeBlanc. Yeah. Or Aslan. Yes, or else Aslan is LeBlanc. That's canon to Narnia now. Yeah, like, and again, like, this is, like, a better presentation of a seer's, like, personal guard, like the Emperor's Guard. Because, like, here, this looks more like an epic military procession rather than just having a stroll down the street kind of thing. And it comes down to the perspective, at least partly, because, like, here, we're kind of eye level with them. They're just kind of walking past. Here, we are way below them. Like, we're below them and we're looking up. And that makes them appear, like, more powerful and stronger and have a grander stature in the image. So, you know, there's things that could have been done to... Anyway, I think that's all of them? I think so. Let me just double check, though. Let's see. Yeah. Yep, I think that's all of them. What about Nasus? Oh, I like the Nasinus and Reluctant spell. Oh yeah, like I wanna fuck with an Asir deck because I wanna pull this off just one time. One time I want to pull off the Ascendant's Call. I want to end the game with that. Just one time I want to do it. Because it would be so cool. Because, like, imagine how many fucking cutscenes are gonna play when you summon Nasus and Renekton and then you immediately level them up to level 3. It's like, the opponent just gonna quit because it's annoying. Do animation breakdowns of the new level up animations? Maybe. There's not that much to talk about with them, I don't think. But yeah, I think that's it. I think that is all of the frickin' cards in this new expansion. Whew. Took a little while, but we got through it with all my breaks. I do wish they had a viewer. Like, I wish you could see the level up animation for the various characters, like, in the menu. Because it's a little annoying that I'd have to go into game and actually level him up in order to get footage of the level up animation to look at if I wanted to do that. So, you know. What do you want to see from a new Ishtal champion? I'd like to see one that isn't from the ruling class of Ishtal. I'd like to see one that isn't, like, a member of the aristocracy there, like, isn't, like, highborn or whatever. I got to see what's a normal Ishtali life like, and what would a champion be like if they came from, like, the lower classes of Ishtal. That would be interesting to me. Because we know a fuck ton already about, like, what all the nobles get up to, but we don't really know anything. How do they farm? Like, how do they get food? How do they get anything? Anyway, let's try and catch up on some super chats. I think I missed some. I'm trying to look through my list here. I'm using Streamlabs, and it's just not very well organized. Samira Marching Lady has better arms than the Squire. Yeah. Yeah, she does. Gotta get going. Thank you for keeping me company at work. It's always interesting to hear your take on these. Well, I'm glad to have helped you out, Dee Kuhn. Thank you. I love the imagery of a vulture representing the idea of the second death. I think I can make them replay. Can't I? Yeah, I can. There we go. This is not a new donation. I'm just making them replay on screen so you can see them too. I love the imagery of the second death and its flavor, especially and the link to that PC card. Yeah, I think it's quite cool. Wild Play said, "I love your content. Thank you very much." No, that's not the one I wanted to replay. Someone super chatted, "What does Pot of Greed do?" And yes, well, it lets me draw 2 extra cards from my deck. And then the Ishtal champion. I think that's all of them. Oh, the capital being Egypt is fine, but Shurima was an empire. Where is its province nations? That could be your Male Kingdom and Ethiopia. Yeah. Like Mali, I think you meant to write there. But yeah, that's the idea of Shurima, is like that it's an empire with like an Egyptian-inspired nation at its heart, but then a lot of other stuff is in there as well. Which I hope so. Like, I hope so. And I think I have caught all of them now. Yes? Yes. What region would you like to make a card art for? Oh, no. I am not strong enough of an artist to make card art for this. Certainly not anymore. Like, maybe like a couple of years ago when I was still regularly doing commission work, I could probably have sort of sharpened my skills up to make something that might be passable, but I don't, like, I've rusted. I've focused so much on YouTube, my skills have atrophied completely. So I wouldn't want to make card art for any of this. Not anymore. What about the restored sun disk art? Isn't that also... Is it on Mobilytics? I should check. Oh, no, wait. There it is. There it is. Is that worth talking about especially? Not really. I don't think, like, it's... It doesn't really do anything special, I don't think. It's just, like, here's a seer for scale, and there's the sun disk and the water. That is, like, it's just a nice... It's just a nice landscape piece, but it's not really... I don't think there's anything really interesting about it, especially. But yeah, I think that's it. So I guess... Thank you for watching. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for hanging out. And, why does the sun disk create water anyway? I don't know why it does, but it's the basis of a seer's power. Like, that's what the Empire of Shurima was based on, was that the Emperor had the ability to create water in the desert. Like, that's the whole power politics of Shurima. Anyway, I need to go lie down, because my back is a bastard and a half, and it annoys me. So I'm going to do that, and I'm going to thank you all very much for tuning in, and for watching, and for hanging out with me, and for listening to me blabber on, for 5 hours almost about the new cards in this expansion. Once all of the expansions are out, like once there's like gonna be 3 of them, I think, we'll do a follow-up live stream taking a look at all the cards that they add again. Can you explain again why Azir was so wrong to not free the slaves as soon as he became emperor? Yes, because slavery is wrong. Slavery is bad, and if you do it, that's a bad. You shouldn't do that. If you want to be a good person and do the right thing, you should make slavery happen less, preferably not at all. I wish I had a more complicated explanation for that, but that's just slavery bad. So, yeah. Sorry, I can't give you a better answer than that. Anyway, thanks for watching, everyone.